You guys, it's so easy to look around at the state of your life, the state of the world, and feel kind of powerless, whether it's global crises, messy politics, or the challenges we all face in our own relationships, our careers. Many of us can slip into this passive place of, I can't do anything about it. What difference can I make? But here's the truth. You have far more power than you know. I'm Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby. This is Love, Happiness, and Success. And my guest today is Cynthia Rivard, who is an expert on this topic. She says each of us has the power to become a micro leader, creating change and influencing our own lives. And she's going to tell us about this today, because if you've ever felt powerless, this conversation is going to show you how much power you really have. So, Cynthia, thank you for joining me, and congratulations on the new book.
Thank you, Lisa. I am delighted to be here and honored to be able to share with your audience. This is going to be fun. Thank you.
Well, I think, this is so needed for, the reasons that were just described. Like, many people feel very powerless. They're not happy with where they are or what's going on, but they don't feel like they have been effective in closing that gap, creating change, creating different outcomes. And it just feels like all these obstacles, and it's so disempowering. And so in your new book, you crack into this, and you are taking your decades of experience in executive leadership. I mean, people running companies and organizations and the things that you're teaching them, and distilling this down into these leadership competencies that basic humans like the rest of us can use on a day-to-day basis to have influence over our own lives. There's so much good stuff here. I mean, where do we even start?
Well, if I could start just with one definition that I think will kind of set the tone for all of this, the way I've come to describe or define hope is faith in action. And that can be faith in yourself, first and foremost, faith in the vision you're holding for a better future for yourself, your family, your community. You have to have a vision and faith in something and then take action. So hopefully we'll be able to get into action taking today, because that's how it all comes together. One little tiny action starts to get you out of that disempowerment. It creates empowerment and hope.
Okay. So much to unpack. So maybe we can also talk a little bit, just to kind of, as we're talking about terms and definitions, just the concept of leadership. What is your definition of leadership? Like, what does that mean?
So this leads nicely into the whole micro leadership conversation, because really leadership at the most basic level is your ability to positively, and I'll say ethically, influence other people. And when we recognize the influence we have in our daily interactions, once you recognize it, you can be more intentional in those interactions, leaving people in a more positive state. You can be intentional in the influence you have, but we all have influence. We are all leaders. If you're a stay-at-home mom, certainly you have influence in your own family, and probably a lot of other places as well. But we all have influence every day with the people we interact with.
Yeah. But it doesn't often feel like that, does it? I mean, I think that is not the experience that many people are having. I'm curious to get your insight into that. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, as you alluded to, most people do not see themselves as a leader and actually would run scared from the term. I'm not a leader. I just want to stay over here in the background and, you can let me know what to do and I'll help, which is fine because we need those people behind the scenes in every operation. But recognize that as you develop rapport with your coworkers and you're working side by side with someone, you have an ability in those interactions to influence outcomes. Just a casual conversation or an idea you put forward that somebody grabs and moves on, you have influence. Maybe your coworker's just having a bad day and you lift them up. You have influence, and that is the most important thing to remember about leadership. But when you recognize it and become intentional about it is when it gets really juicy. The other thing I'll point out is once you recognize your own ability to influence, take it a step further and look at the people in your life and all of those people that they interact with and have potential influence with. That's the ripple effect. If you start out your day with a huge blowout fight with your partner, and then you both go about your day, and for the next hour or two, everybody's in a bad mood, well, who are you creating ripples with as the two of you go out in the world in your bad mood and interact with other people?
That's interesting. No, and this is a really good point. And I would also like to say, substantiated by quite a bit of research, that whether or not you have a self-concept as a leader and are intentionally exercising your own influence, what we know from a lot of research is that we transmit our mood state, and that if you have people who are typically happy in your life, you will be a much happier person versus if you have a lot of people in your life who trend toward negativity and depression, that absolutely impacts you. And so that even our mood state can be quite contagious, as well as the thinking styles that we inhabit. And so it is partially, getting a sense of your own identity as a leader, your own influence, but perhaps also noticing how you might be influencing other people and also being influenced by them.
Absolutely.
Leadership everywhere.
Absolutely. I mean, your energy is potent influence that you bring forward. And if you set the intention of making it positive, you can, because when intention is very powerful. And if you intend to have a positive influence on those people, you can do that and make their day, or at least their next few minutes.
Oh, well, but I really appreciated too what you were saying a minute ago, that even the term, the word leadership can feel like to some people, and I do not want to overgeneralize, but I'm going to anyway. I think maybe women sometimes, or people who, to your point, don't really see themselves as being showboats, like getting out front, like, hey, everybody follow me. Like that is not their self-concept, and that we can think of leadership in that way. But so you're really offering a definition, which can be not, the person on stage or at the front of the crowd, or like the I think there's like a risk involved in leadership, right? Like you stand up, you stand for something, you take a stand, and now you're like kind of the lightning rod where a lot of that energy gets directed back at you, right? And so that feels scary for someone, but that there are very quiet, simple moments of leadership that is influencing other people in order to attain outcomes in the direction that you want them to go.
You can think of those as, leadership from the side or incognito leaders. We all have influence. And sometimes, you can be in a room with a chairperson leading the meeting, but they won't be the most influential person in the room. You'll recognize it has a lot to do with the rapport and trust and who people are looking to for ideas, but it doesn't require a title to kind of lead the conversation or to put something out there that's a good idea that others will jump on. And it doesn't have to be scary if you're doing it one-on-one with a conversation with a friend. You can really powerfully influence and their direction or their thoughts on something that's important to you. There's a lot of potential there.
This is so interesting. There's a lot to crack into here. Okay, well then just sort of follow up on what you were just saying. I mean, I think this is fascinating, but also true. I mean, who has not experienced this, right? Like the boss, the person who is supposed to be in charge, in a group, that there's often another leader that is actually the person that people look to, trust, that does hold the influence. And what do you think is happening in that person, with that person, that is allowing them to be so influential, effectively influential, that maybe the boss man or woman isn't doing?
Well, sometimes it's just the history. Maybe the boss is new and they're still trying to build a track record or, get the lay of the land. And there's somebody else in the room with a lot more history, knowledge, rapport with the rest of the team. A lot of it's rapport building and trust. If they don't
investing in the relationship.
Yeah, a lot of it. And so if you trust someone, you listen to them. We all hopefully do that with our family members and friends. If you trust them, whether you think you're going to agree with them or not, you'll listen and, give them some leeway to share their ideas and perspectives on things.
Got it. So a big part of being influential is cultivating a relationship where another person is receptive to taking influence from you. And that is earned through trust.
Yeah. And a big part of that, you mentioned it earlier, we have such a divisive society now, but it drills down into interactions that have nothing to do with politics or religion or anything big going on, because people are just kind of on alert. There's just so much change going on and friction. And when we sense change, we go into fear response, right? With which people know as fear, fight, flight. It's an automatic reaction to want to hide our heads from things going on and not admit, that's the freeze, not admit it's going on or pretend, well, that's not going to happen, or things will right themselves without my involvement. But we also see the fight response a lot right now on extreme personalities in the media or, just in our lives, people that want to fight for it, whatever. A lot of times it's their beliefs. And that's something that people tend to fight for a little more than other things, but they want to fight instead of, heaven forbid, listening to another perspective and allowing that, well, maybe there's a middle road here, or maybe you could make one or two good points and we can meet on this or, influence each other on a path forward. A lot of fighting.
Well, but a great point though, too. And what was coming up for me, as you were talking, like there are certainly, people who are more comfortable in combative situations. Like I think that there's some personality stuff there, but I think for a lot of us, I mean, I certainly have this experience. It's like you have these fire gods like clashing in the sky, like big public figures that is like sort of larger than life personalities. And I think, for the rest of us, we're just sort of like sitting here watching this. But to your point, in a scary, conflictual world where people have all kinds of competing strong opinions, it can become hard to figure out, like, what do I believe? What should I believe? Who do I follow? Who do I trust? And I would, in fearful situations, can we become more vulnerable to like trying to figure out, like, okay, who am I going to be aligned with, and kind of following someone? I think that can be a response to conflict and fearful situations. Like we seek safety in following a strong leader. And what I think is so interesting about your work and what you're saying is that it's very important to stay connected to your own vision, your own values, and your own personal mission, and not substitute somebody else's judgment for your own. Is that fair to say?
That I believe that. I'm not sure I just said that, but I align with that for sure. and one thing, I mean, the world that we live in now, especially with AI or just social media and all the sharing that's going on, there is so much mistruth, like intentional mistruths. People are just sharing for clickbait and whatever. And it's so easy to get misled and to only see, you know, a small part of a story. And I just want to encourage, no matter what the circumstance is, you know, whether it's politics or just something you're trying to hash out at the office.
Yeah, or with your partner.
Yeah, exactly. Try to stay open to dialogue and just hearing other perspectives, because it's the diversity of thought and diversity of perspectives that allows us to create progress. If there was no friction at all, we'd stay stuck. Although things are always changing, we might not be moving in the best direction because we're not creating progress intentionally. We're not listening to new ideas and being open to them. And one thing, I'm sorry, before I forget, that I always encourage people is to learn to recognize, to just sit with something, to see how it feels to you. I talk a lot about intuition, and everyone, you can consider yourself intuitive or not. This will work if you stay open to a new perspective, or as you were saying, Lisa, different people, and you're not sure whether they're telling the truth or if you want to believe them. Sit with it, because that, and trust that kind of gut feeling, or that first hint of, wait a minute, is that right? Should I listen to that? Trust yourself. Perhaps you should do more research. There's just so much out there that's not true. And a lot of it, you know, you notice the algorithms following you around based on one thing you clicked on. So you'll keep seeing things that may align with your viewpoints, but they may not be true.
Yeah, or there may be other ways of looking at it. You know what? Before we move on, I am feeling so compelled to give a quick plug for an organization, a nonprofit organization that is mobilizing initiatives to support people in developing the capabilities and the competencies that we're talking about right now. braverangels.org. If you go to their website, their leadership is half red, half blue, and they have put out so many high quality, totally free online courses to help you develop communication skills and competencies, how to set healthy boundaries and maintain relationships with people with whom you love but may also disagree with, and how to navigate fraught situations with confidence and grace. I had the great privilege of interviewing Dr. Bill Doherty on this podcast not too long ago, and this is happening at a community level, at a national level, but could also happen within your home. Lots of resources and support, because this is hard to do, what you're talking about. So braverangels.org. I am not a paid spokesmodel. This is something that I just love and I want to support. And I feel like we're talking about that right now, Cynthia, the importance of being able to tolerate diversity of thought and, seeking to understand and not freaking out.
Exactly. It's so key. I love that they're doing that. And really the trick for all of us, the skill we need to develop is learning to regulate our own emotions first so that we can emulate that calm, that peace that we want in the world. And when you're able to maintain calm, you can think more clearly and you can communicate more clearly and you can help diffuse the reactive emotions in the room of the other people by you being calm. Talk about an ability to influence. You will be the guiding light and voice of calm once you develop that skill. But then the other thing to remember is to first always not seek to convince, but to understand.
That's a leadership competency. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it is, whether you see yourself as a leader or not, it's a competency for getting through conflict. Seek to understand the other person and where they're coming from and why they think that, whether you believe it or not, and also be open to perhaps being convinced that they're right or half right, or, just be open. But that, if we could all do that, we would have peace and we'd be able to create progress because we could have conversations.
Right. And this is so interesting too, because, and it totally tracks, like what you were saying, is that really the foundation of strong and effective leadership is having authentic relationships with other people that are built on familiarity, knowing, trust, and that one of the ways we create that trust is by helping other people feel understood, acknowledged, and respected. Whereas I think that, it can be tempting to think about leadership as almost a more combative personality. Like, no, this is the way. I'm right. You're wrong. And that really what you're saying is the opposite of that. There is the ability to see things through someone else's eyes and build the relationship that makes them receptive to your ideas that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. That's awesome.
I like to think of this as conscious leadership or compassionate leadership, not authoritative, which is what you're talking about. It's the type of leadership that I grew up or first entered the workplace seeing. That was my role models, and it was horrible. I hated it. I tried to emulate it. It didn't work for me, but that was the old way. And I think in some workplaces that's changed. I think in a lot of places it hasn't. Parenting styles have changed as well. They used to be a lot more authoritative, and now they're a little more compassionate and interactive and nurturing. It used to be my way or the highway, right? So thank goodness things are changing. And with that compassion, that doesn't make you a weak leader. That or friend or influencer. You have to have compassion.
Yeah. Okay. And then that can be a source of strength and leadership. Now, another dimension of this that I feel is also probably very important is something that you mentioned at the very beginning of this conversation, which is another pillar of effective leadership is having clarity of vision. Can you take us into this and just let's unpack?
Well, I mean, every circumstance is different, but let's talk about your personal priorities or vision. You have to have one. if you're feeling disempowered, which is how we started the conversation, because there's so much change, and it's very easy to feel that disempowerment because there's a lot that is out of our control as an individual. So look at your personal vision and what you can contribute to. Because if you expand, not looking at the world stage, but your neighborhood or community, there are so many ways you could make a difference. And if you don't have a lot of time, it could be financial contributions. If you don't have the money, it could be with a little time. We can all shave off an hour a week or a couple hours a week to contribute to something we're passionate about. Um, Finding, a vision helps, but I encourage everyone to not feel like they need a clear vision to get started, because it is taking a small action, getting off the couch and the disempowerment, and taking a small action in some direction that will help you feel empowered and have more ideas come to you about what you could do and how you could make a difference in someone's life. And the first step could be to do some research or talk to a friend about your heart and your idea, or confusion on the topic, and just talk it out. That could be a first step. And then you might have an accountability buddy to help you. That's always fun.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about coaching right now, Cynthia, and so and my listeners know. So certainly, I have a long history as a therapist. I'm a psychologist, but about 10 years ago, I did also become a board certified coach through the National Board for Certified Counselors, and now I also teach therapists coaching competencies, because it's a totally different thing. Coming into therapy is like, okay, what's wrong? Where's the hurt? Where's the damage? What needs to be healed? Which is so valuable, because sometimes that is absolutely true. But what you're talking about, I think, is the foundation of coaching as well as leadership, which is the shift of perspective to thinking, what do I want? What do I want for my community? What do I want for my relationship? What do I want for my life, my home, my kids, my finances? And having that clarity of, this is what I would like it to be. And that's really important.
And start taking action first, because if you try to get a clear vision first, you're just going to stay in inaction. The other thing with you sharing that, I'd love to share. I remember years ago having a mentor challenge me with a vision, and I remember thinking, I can't come up with a big one, because I had spent so many years playing small and not having enough self-love and self-worth and self-esteem, which are pretty pervasive issues in our society. So you don't have to start with a big vision. Just start with something and be okay with it growing and expanding and challenging yourself, and being okay with the fact that you may not create it. It's okay. It's not a failure, because when you stretch, it just feels really fulfilling to know that you did something that a year ago you didn't think you would ever do.
Okay. That's very empowering too, because I think so many people can get very paralyzed on like, what do I want? Like I see this come up with career exploration, career coaching. Like there are so many different options. We could go in each of these directions, and it's like this paralysis of making the wrong choice. And what I'm hearing you say is that a way of breaking through this is that, identify a general direction that you would like to trend towards. And then that's good enough. Start thinking about what actions would be in alignment with that. So let's go into actions. I mean, you've talked about that several times, about that's really where the power is. And so people are like, I want this, but there's like just this blank space in terms of what do I do? Or there can also be a history, I think, of like trying different things and it doesn't work for a variety of reasons. And that can feel really defeating too. And it can make people feel like giving up and that helplessness. Like, what's the point? Well, I'm curious to hear your insights.
Well, I like to think that action, no matter where it leads, is not a failure. It's going to be feedback. And I'm sure you've heard that before. It's hard to really incorporate it and to not be disappointed if you have a goal you're heading toward and that didn't work and that didn't work. But you learned. You have to start somewhere and learn in the process. And if you are evaluating your action taking often, like the more the better. Is this working? Do I need to tweak? Do I need to regenerate my action plan and go in a different direction? If you're constantly evaluating that, you're not going to spend a year on the wrong path. You're going to recognize, okay, this isn't working as I thought. What else should I do? What should I tweak? Where should I look? Who do I know that could shed some insight? You ask for help when you need it, right? And there's a wealth of information out there. You can do more research, talk to people. There's a lot of things you can do to tweak the process. Always hold some aspirational vision, but don't get married to the plan.
That's good advice.
The plan is learning as you go. Remember, I said just start taking action. Don't have it all worked out before you get started. So if you know you don't have it all worked out, it's like you're testing along the way. You're not failing, you're learning. Okay, that didn't work. What else can we try? You're not going to find that out while you sit and think about it. This is the problem with that freeze response, which we may identify as being an overwhelm or analysis paralysis. You're frozen in indecision because you're afraid of making the wrong decision. And I'm just, best advice is just try something because then either I keep leaning in that direction or I tweak something or I go in another direction, but you don't know, after you do your due diligence, of course, do your best research and then just try something.
Right. Well, no, this is good advice. And what I hear you saying right now is echoing some of the other things that we often teach in coaching. And one is this just growth mindset and reframing trying something and having it not work as being, what did I learn from this experience? How did this advance me down the path theoretically? And I think that you're also, so I just have to share. So a structured tool that we'll often use at coaching in my practice is something called an after action review, which I did not invent. I think it came from like Navy SEALs will do this habitually, which is doing anything. And then what happened? After action review. So I tried this thing. Here's what I wanted to happen. Here's what actually happened. What did I learn? And what do I want to do differently next time so that every single thing that we're doing becomes a source of new information that can guide us? And can I also just validate something else I heard you say that I thought was very, very wise and important? This concept that we might not know how to do something and we can learn. There is a developmental process for all of us that we need to go through. If it's reading a book or taking a course or some kind of personal development thing where it's like, I don't know how to do this yet. And it's not an all or nothing. I can't do it. No, I haven't learned how to do this yet. That's so much more empowering. And that can be this important part of taking action, because if you don't believe that, it'll stop you in your tracks. I'm not good at that. I can't. Failure. And you're saying, no, be brave. Get out there.
And the other thing that will help with that, I think, if you're feeling hesitancy, which we talk about as fear, but quite often people don't feel it or recognize it as fear, you just get into overwhelm and indecision mode. I talk about micro actions. Start with the smallest possible action step you can come up with to get out of the fear response. If you just any little thing that's going in that direction, because then your subconscious is going to see you heading in that direction and start to lessen the resistance it was giving you with that fear response, and you'll be able to take more and more action. And that's a great way to get out of the overwhelm or the fear response, is just pick something small, but do something.
Can we do something with and for our listeners right now?
I don't know. What do you have in mind, Lisa?
Let's do something. So let's all just pause for a second. And I would like all of our friends here, Cynthia, maybe me and you could do this too, to think about what is something that you want. And just hold it in your mind. And maybe it is not a full-blown vision, but like the general direction you would like to trend in. What do you want more of? And think about what that is. Whip out your phone, write an email to yourself, open up your notes app, but write that down. Step one. And then let's all just think for a second about what could be a micro action that would begin actualizing this, that you could do now, like during this podcast or right afterwards. I have personally an ongoing struggle. I have ADHD. And so like, if I'm not working pretty hard at it, my life turns into chaos, like very easily. And I can get overwhelmed and like, back down. And, micro actions for me, it's important for me to feel clear, to feel confident, organized, like I can get things done. That's something that is important to me. And I had a day not too long ago, it was probably a couple of weeks ago, where, it felt like my office was a wreck. I took out the trash and I watered my plants, and I felt so much better.
You did something. Yeah. You got that off the list.
Do you have examples like that in your own life? Like a micro action that will be like, okay, this is moving in the right direction, even if it doesn't even seem directly connected.
Things like that, if, I'm trying to think of a different example, but yeah, whether it's just walking in the kitchen and cleaning up, or sitting down and writing my to-do list for the week so I don't forget something, which can lead to anxiety. There's all these things in my head. Write it down so you don't forget something, and then you can prioritize and start chipping away at it. But sometimes it's the little things like watering the plants that you're afraid you'll forget, that need to either get done or end up on the list so you don't forget them.
Right. Okay. So this is all starting to come together, Cynthia. So we have the vision of knowing what you want, understanding the actions that will start creating that. And I think we've been talking about self-leadership, right? Like in order to be a leader, to a degree at least, we need to get ourselves under control. If it's like the things we're doing, the actions we're taking, but also, being aware of how we're communicating with others. But I wonder if we could talk into this next piece around the influence part, because I feel like what we have been talking about, relationship building, trust, seeking to understand, is there also a part of leadership that is more intentional around, I would like to enroll this person in my vision and get them on board. In your definition of leadership, is that an intentional thing, or is it just kind of a natural outgrowth of people doing a good job on all these other metrics?
Well, it depends on how close you are to that person. If it's a family member, it would probably be more of a natural evolution of things. You have an idea and you already have rapport, and you enlist that other person in your idea. But if, as an example, you have this grand idea of, or maybe not even grand, but this idea outside of your comfort zone of something you would like to see done in your community, and it feels a little overwhelming, well, then you could intentionally share that with someone that you see you have rapport with or not, but someone that you think might be good to help, and intentionally go about trying to build rapport and share your passion or your idea, brainstorm with them and enlist their help. I mean, it can be both, because we will have influence and go about it naturally in our daily interactions. But once you recognize that and see that you have influence and can lead, you may be compelled to do something a little more that's a little out of your comfort zone and recruit others to your idea or your.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and this is so valuable too. So certainly when it comes to creating positive change in a community, but I'm also thinking about the daily, the struggles and the frustrations. If it is trying to create positive change in your relationship with your partner or your sister or your kids or your coworkers or all these things. And I think one of my big takeaways from this entire conversation, Cynthia, is that to shift your own perspective and create something where you're able to approach people and say, this could be so much better if we did this thing together. But like, think about, relationship conflict, right? How often is it like, let me tell you all of the things that I don't like and what I want you specifically to do differently, right? And, right. As opposed to, this could be so much better. And bringing that person into something positive as opposed to a
Absolutely. Yeah.
thing they weren't going to want to fight with you about. Mm-hmm.
And then going back to the idea of seeking first to understand, because once that other person feels heard and listened to, they are more likely to lower their defenses and perhaps listen to your side if you speak calmly and diplomatically. We lead by example to exert the most influence and, be the change we want to see, right?
I love it. Oh, all right. So quick recap, and then we'll wrap up. So big takeaways. You're already a leader, whether you know it or not. You do have influence, whether or not you're aware of it. So it is time to start doing this more intentionally. And that involves, first of all, understanding who you are, what you want, getting yourself under control, the actions that will bring you in alignment with your vision, but also having a more intentional way of managing relationships built on understanding, respect, the cultivation of trust, having empathy for somebody's point of view, a tolerance for diversity of thought. And then from that position, being able to find collaborative solutions where you will also have the opportunity to say, you know what we could do, and have people be ready to maybe listen to that and feel more excited about it. So is that cover everything in a nutshell?
Beautifully. We should have just started there. And
it takes me a while to get there. I mean, we had a lot to unpack, so I feel like we did it.
We covered a lot of ground. Thank you. No, that was beautiful, Lisa. Well said. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, and thank you. So you guys, my guest today again has been Cynthia Rivard. She is the author of a new book, Hope for a New Era, that teaches that leadership isn't just for people with titles. It is a calling for all of us. And in her book, if you check it out, you'll get even more insight into how all of us can intentionally step into our own sphere of influence, no matter how small, to create ripple effects of change in a direction that we want it to go. So, Cynthia, thank you so much. And tell our listeners, where can they learn more about you? Where can they get the book? Where can they follow you?
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, to keep it simple, I have links and everything you might like to know about me and my work, my books, my free YouTube channel on cynthiarivard.com. So if you check out my website, you'll find some free resources there, a link to YouTube, and information on both my books.
Okay. A New Breed of Leader and Hope for a New Era, available at cynthiarivard.com. That is Cynthia with a Y, Cynthia, and the last name is Rivard, Rivard. Wonderful. So people can connect more with you after this, Cynthia. But thank you again so much for sharing your wisdom and your very positive and loving message with us today. This was great.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. I appreciate it.